So, politicians not telling us the truth. Okay, so we hear a lot about Medicaid cuts, close to $1 trillion in Medicaid cuts over the next 10 years. And they're saying, don't worry about that. If you're receiving Medicaid, if you have a loved one receiving Medicaid in a nursing home, or you're 65 and older receiving Medicaid and Medicare, which millions of people do receive Medicare and Medicaid. But politicians say, oh, you have nothing to worry about. All of the cuts are just going to be for those lazy 26-year-olds that are playing video games in their parents' basement. That's who we're going to cut off. We're going to make those people go to work. And the other cuts are, we're just cutting illegal aliens, undocumented immigrants off of Medicaid. All right, so I've got proof here that guess what? Politicians are not telling us the truth. Number one, let's get with the undocumented immigrants. If you find in the big beautiful bill, the hundreds of pages in there where it changes the law that says, okay, people that are undocumented in this country can no longer get Medicaid. It's not in there because people that are in this country legally undocumented cannot get Medicaid, period, end of story. There are some people that are in this country and they were allowed in this country because they're refugees or asylees. Some people say they shouldn't be, but those people are legal in this country. We gave them green cards. And if they fulfill the requirements for Medicaid, then they get. But we're talking undocumented people that are in this country illegally. They cannot get Medicaid. You'll hear a rebuttal on that. And they say, well, people that go into the emergency room. Okay, yes. When someone goes in the emergency room, doctors, their number one job is to make sure that person, leaves that emergency room. That person is stabilized. They don't check your legal status. They don't check your birth certificate. You shouldn't have to walk around with your passport or anything like that. And some people that are in this country legally go to the emergency room. And it's been estimated that is less than 0.4% of emergency Medicaid spending. The other 99.6% of Medicaid spending in the emergency room is all the other people that are in this country legally. So politicians like to take a very, 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 very small sliver and say, we're going after that. And they're basically throwing the baby out with the bathwater. You've got a bunch of people over there. Oh, you've got a bunch of people. Sorry about that. You've got a bunch of people. There's a certain group of people in America that they want to essentially, they've got someone in their target, that one person out of 100 that they don't like. They say it's a different color than me, and a different hair color, different accents. They're in this country, whatever the case may be. And they're willing to burn the whole thing down in order to get to that one person. But unfortunately, as we'll see, as I will show, that those people are kind of regretting it because it affects them. They're targeting this one person and throwing the entire baby out with the bathwater. It's coming back to affect them. So, okay, so I worked at the Department of Social Services before I worked at the Social Security Administration. I worked at the Department of Social Services doing food stamps, doing Medicaid. If you're not in this country legally, you ain't getting it, period, end of story. Okay, so we're still getting $1 trillion of Medicaid cuts, and it's not targeting those undocumented immigrants. So who does it target? Okay, the other argument is we're just kicking a whole bunch of people off that are 26 years old, and that should be working. Okay, here's the example that proves that that's not correct. In Texas, yes, Texas, who is not known as a very liberal state, even the Texas Hospital Association said, hey, if these cuts happen, which they did, it's going to have a catastrophic impact on Texas. And Texas, they don't give Medicaid to undocumented immigrants because, they barely give health insurance to Texans. I know I went to high school in Paris, Texas, so I can talk crap about Texas. So it's not undocumented immigrants that they're taking a cut on. Texas is getting a cut in their Medicaid, and hundreds of thousands of Texans are going to be affected, as well as the other 49 states. But I'm just using Texas as an example. Okay, so it's not, Texas is going to get their Medicaid cut, and it's not because of undocumented immigrants, because they don't pay for undocumented immigrants. And it's not 26-year-olds. Why? Because Texas never gave Medicaid to 26-year-olds unless you're disabled. So that stereotypical thing that politicians talk about, well, this is just for lazy 26-year-olds that live in their parents' basement and are playing PlayStation all day. We want those people to go back to work. Well, Texas never gave health insurance to those people. These are called non-expansion states. So Texas, Georgia, Alabama, Florida, Mississippi, Kansas, South Dakota, Wyoming, South Carolina, Tennessee, Wisconsin. Wisconsin is a little bit different, but the other 9 states never expanded Medicaid to those populations. But guess what? They are getting cut. So this shows that it's not about them. And we're only talking those 26, those people that are not eligible, that have to go back to work now. They're only a very, very small percentage. It's estimated that the spending on those are probably about 3 or 4%, but we're getting $1 trillion cuts. And what's going to happen is who's going to pay? We already know. Hospitals are closing down. That's one of the things that Texas has said that's going to be catastrophic. The budgetary, they're going to be Medicaid-heavy services like pediatrics, behavioral health, obstetrics are likely to be considered for reduction or elimination. Maternal care in rural settings will be placed in extreme peril. And so this is Texas. Again, they're going to get budget cuts, even they don't give it to undocumented. So they're not cutting there. They're not cutting, lazy gamers, the stereotypical lazy gamers. But they're getting cuts. So just as every other state is getting cuts. And so this is going to affect everybody else, all the other people that are receiving Medicaid. And because there's also Medicare cuts happening, and people say, well, that's not in the big, beautiful bill. That is correct. It's not in the big, beautiful bill. Hey, if you need help with Medicare, Medicare Advantage, Medicare supplements, Part D plans, make sure you reach out to my partners at Chapter Medicare. I looked for a place that would help you all out, and Chapter Medicare knocked it out of the park. They've got excellent customer service. They look at every single plan in your area, and their help is always 100% free. Give them a call, and they'll see if they can help you out, and tell them Dr. Ed said hi. And it should be, because when the government, Congress passes a law that causes a deficit, then that has to be offset. It's called the Pay-Go Act. And that's exactly what's going to happen is Russell Vogt, who was an architect of Project 2025, he's the guy who gets to choose where the cuts come from. And he can't touch Social Security. This is part of the law. They can't touch Social Security. They can't touch Veterans Affairs. So then where can he touch? Where can he find over $500 billion? Medicare. So Medicare is going to be started to be cut. That's why we see a lot of people having issues with their plans next year, and they're going to have issues going forward. Hospitals are going to be closing down. Doctor networks are going to be reduced. We already see that in the news every day. So Medicaid is going to be cut. Medicare is going to be cut. We've already seen millions of people are going to lose the Affordable Care Act. And there's a lot of people out there that says, well, I don't have any of those. I've got private insurance. Well, guess what? Just as in Texas, people in Texas pay more than the national average. Why? Because you've got a bunch of people that do not have health insurance, and they go to the emergency room because just because you have health insurance doesn't mean you don't get into an accident or get sick. You go to the emergency room, the most expensive way to get health care, and you can't pay. And the hospitals get stuck with that. The health insurance gets stuck with that, and everybody else's premium is going to go up. And the people that really can't afford that premium cut are obviously the seniors that are dependent on Social Security only. And people say, well, we're getting this big cut of taxes. Isn't the one big, beautiful bill a big cut in taxes? Well, if you look at the Congressional Budget Office, the tax cuts mostly go to the highest wage earners. Let me show a little bit better there. So the highest wage earners there, they get the maximum set. And if you're in the lowest part, in terms of household income, your benefits are not very much. And it's even worse when you take into consideration the tariffs, because you might get a tad bit, it's estimated probably about $160 or so if you're low income as a tax cut, but you're paying even more of that because of the tariffs. So when you take the tariffs into consideration and inflation across the board and the increasing prices of healthcare, then yeah, the majority of people are going to lose because of the one big beautiful bill and tariffs. This is a Yale study here. And guess who? It's a big benefit. Guess what? The people who always get the big benefit on this. So there are a few pennies that come to the rest of us, but most of it goes to the rich, the powerful, the billionaires, and the big corporations. So it's going to be tough out there.